All right, it gives me great pleasure to introduce two colleagues, Dr. Anne-Marie Stanley from the Eastman School of Music and Dr. Dan Isbell from Ithaca College. And I have to say that this is the second year that we've done this, and it's just fantastic to have the involvement of the Eastman School and the fantastic music education department there. So that's I'm really thankful to you guys for being here today. The topic is, but how is this supposed to work? Practical applications of popular musicianship in the classroom. Please welcome Anne-Marie and Dan.
Thank you. I'm Anne-Marie and this is Dan, in case you were wondering who was who. In our session, we're very passionate about theory into practice and taking research that we both do in our university setting and making it real and practical for people in the classrooms. So first of all, Dan's going to talk about historical and contemporary calls for popular music use in the classroom, and one way that he helps his university students at Ithaca College embrace pop music pedagogy. And then I'm going to talk about a lifestyle change that you can make in your own classrooms to help you use some of these methods, and talk to you a little bit about some research that I've been doing on student collaboration, and then get input and questions from you guys. So go ahead.
Using this arrow here, down.
This one, click.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to just give a little background about my interest in this topic and why I find it valuable to work with my students. Throughout my young years as a musician in high school, particularly, and then well into my professional work as a public school teacher in Colorado, I played in rock bands, an African drumming ensemble, and a jazz quartet, pretty steadily throughout my time there. In addition to having lots of friends who made music but didn't know how to read music, right? A lot of guitar players, and I lived with a fiddle player for a long time. So I had these kind of dual worlds that I was living, and didn't think too much about the disconnect between the two, or the degree to which they were connected, because for me, my job was to teach high school band. And that's what I did. I went to work and I taught the band and went home and had my other work. And so it didn't really dawn on me until I started to teach at Ithaca College and was working with lots and lots of student teachers. Still do. And in informal talks with them, I would ask them, what do you play when somebody says, hey, you're back from school, can you play your clarinet for me? Yeah. And they say, I said, no, just like anything, just any songs, and there's just blank stares. I said, really? And I'd follow up again and again and again. Constantly, there was this world of this big disconnect between the ways they were able to make music and what I thought about as being comprehensive musicianship. And I can remember back, again, when I was teaching public school, there was a lot of great musicians in the high school, that did not want to be a part of the high school band program. Okay, so that's the origin of where I'm going on. And I shared this picture with my students. I want you to think a little bit about where you would feel most secure. And for most of us here, probably you may have participated in that, or you think you could maybe navigate. You see, not everybody's using notation here, but it still follows a kind of a traditional model. And then here we have a few different settings, all right? Now, as we kind of travel through here, I want you to think about the skills that these people have that make it possible for them to collaborate with one another and make music together. Okay, we've moved into a different set of skills, right? Okay, and you think about what they might sound like, how the decisions are being made, how they're interacting with one another on stage, how they might interact with the audience. And here we have more different ways of making music. So think about the role of a public school music educator and the degree to which we are able to successfully prepare young children to leave high school and make music in a wide variety of ways. Okay, so here's some questions that I'd like you to consider. Okay. And it's funny when my students talk about, I don't have my music. I say, well, you're talking about your notation, right? You don't have your sheet music. You don't have your notation. Music is sounds in the air. We've got that, right? But a lot of them are uncomfortable making music without that. Okay. So these are questions that I found really valuable and rewarding for me as a musician when I participated in these sorts of events. And for most of my school, my students, my pre-service music teachers, they have no experience doing this. And much of them only make music in the traditional setting, in large ensembles, band, orchestra, choir, or have made music in small group lessons. Okay, so the degree to which comes up, all right, now what degree do we prepare music teachers to make music in these ways? Okay, and this is nothing new. Okay, and these are some of the, kind of hot button topics that we can kind of throw around in the literature when I travel around and hear people speak about these topics. These are the things that come up. Okay, this notion that I have, when we drive home from work and you put on the radio or you put on Spotify or what is it, this music that you select that you find valuable, and then the music that we have in schools. Okay. This notion of preparing people to teach concert band or orchestra or choir, or whether it's actual broad music. And of course, comprehensive musicianship and lifelong participation. When I speak about comprehensive, or when I speak to young people about comprehensive musicianship, they often go to the standards and think like, well, I'm going to have composition, I'm going to have this in arranging, I'm going to do all these different things, right? But when they talk about lifelong participation in music, many of them consider, well, let's look at all of the people who continue making music in bands and orchestras and choirs, community churches, New Horizons bands, things that are just extensions of the formal world of the public school music, rather than some of these more vernacular experiences. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go through a little bit of some of these quotes. Okay, these start in contemporary world. You may recognize this last name here. And we're going to cycle through some decades. And in the lower right-hand corner, you're going to see a picture of the recording that was #1, Billboard #1 of that year. Okay, so give you a second to read that. Okay, here we are in 2005. Rather strong language, irrelevant in terms of the ability to foster engagement beyond high school. Okay, might be a little bit strong, but the point he's making, hopefully, is not lost. Back in 1972. Here we are now at the Tanglewood Declaration, okay, the landmark document. Okay, this could have been written last week, right? We are now back in 52. And with Ravelli in 1937. Okay, so with this in mind, using what I've just shared here as an introduction, I'm going to share with you the experiences of my students, my music ed students, in 2 courses that I was fortunate to be able to plan and develop and put into practice at Ithaca College. Okay, and yeah, so I'm going to skip. So we have just a quick little detail here about in what ways are these 2 worlds of music different. Okay, music in the school, we're all familiar with this, and then music in society. Okay, outside of school, you can see here that often the key roles here I want to point out are the leadership of a single person, and the skill is really the reproduction of music written by somebody else. Okay, it's kind of where we kind of live on, and those are the 2 criteria here that I focus most closely on when I put together the course. Okay, and now here we have different criteria. Okay, so in order to bring students into these worlds and try to push their boundaries a little bit, I could have added all sorts of criteria here. But again, I just want to focus on learning by ear and putting kids in small, student-led peer groups, we call them friendship groups, where they select music that they want to learn how to play and choose instruments that they want to make and work together in collaborative groups. And linguistics have a term for this ability to jump back and forth between informal and formal worlds. Okay? If you want to have a conversation with me outside of class, I may be using a little different language or maybe presenting myself in a little different way than I am right now in the formal sense. Right? And musicians do this as well. Okay? So what sort of skills are required to help people jump around and make music in different cultures and in different settings? And the two, again, like I want to focus on are the ability to play music by ear and to be able to negotiate decisions on your own in a small group. Okay. There's our campus. Tornado passed through not far from where that camera is just yesterday. Okay. And I used Lucy Green's book as a kind of a groundwork to help me out through the first initial parts of it. And there, she has 7 stages here. Here's our first 4. And real quickly here, in each of there's an undergraduate class that's required of all sophomores, and there's an elective graduate school class. And they start class with everybody is required to bring in a song that they want to learn how to play. Okay? And they get in, and we all do, we call it speed dating. They all stand up and describe what song they brought and what kind of music they want to play. And then from that, we find small groups. We assign them into places to go. They pick the instruments they want to play, and they start working on songs without any further instruction. They're asked to either cover a song, arrange it in a new style, and write their own original piece. Okay? The undergraduates don't have as much time, so they rarely can get through all 3 of those, but the graduate students were able to do all of that. And she's come up with a brand new resource. Again, we're trying to get the practical aspect here. This has just come out, and it gives wonderful tips about how to put these approaches into practice in a variety of ways. Okay, that was just put out this year. Okay, so here's pictures of how the kids organize themselves. And I've got lots and lots of clips about, video of them playing rock and roll, hip hop. They do garage band stuff. They do digital music. They have access to all sorts of instruments and rooms. But what I want to reinforce here today is that this is not necessarily about play rock and roll and all will be well. Right? Because we know that's not what happens. It's about structuring the class in a different way so that they're able to develop skills, to be able to network and be able to play. Now, if you turn them over and say, you can play whatever you want and make decisions, they often choose rock and roll to play. This would work well with Appalachian music, fiddle music, mariachi. It's not rock and roll per se. It's about a different way of setting up the school classroom. Okay, so they're playing a wide variety of songs. In fact, here up there is a fiddle group, some rock band. Okay, and as they went through this experiment, I won't dwell too much on this. If you want to know more about this, I can share with you the research study where we get into much detail about this. But when they heard about the 2 criteria of the class, the no notation and small peer groups, very nervous about the whole thing. Apprehensive, excitement. Some people use the word upset and distraught that they could not be able to use notation. And when I left the room, wasn't with them, they were often going out and kind of, looking for any kind of visual support that they could use to help them through this process. Okay, I'm going to speed up. I don't want to take too much time here. Okay, and here's a picture of the graduate students. You see it's a smaller group. And you can see, here's our typical classroom setting. That's me. And we're having some kind of discussion about what was happening at the moment. Okay, so here I am modeling a little bit on the drum set. Okay, but again, they got to choose the style that they want to play. Here they are starting a class playing some jazz. Okay. So I'm going to move over to the graduate school here, then turn it over to Anne-Marie. And to give them a little bit of security and tips and strategies for bringing this back to their program, I give this top 10 recommendations for putting it into practice at their school. And between summers 2 and 3, all of the graduate students are asked to do some action plan. Do something different at your school, keep record of it, and then come back the following summer and share your experience as part of a culminating capstone experience. And many of them have chosen to put in some of these informal practices in their program. And I'm going to close with a clip of well, I'll get to that in just a minute. This is what I give the students to kind of give them some sort of practical knowledge, because for a lot of them, they don't have any experience making music this way. So it's very risky for them to go into a situation where they're no longer the expert and they're putting themselves on par with their students, many of whom can figure out bass lines and songs faster than they can. And that's an uncomfortable spot for a lot of them. Okay? A lot of these initiatives take time. You've got to be patient. I recommend that for some, if they've never had experience making music on their own in a rock band, go ahead and form your own group. Bring in guest musicians. Make sure that they have resources to make music. There's lots and lots of different ways of acquiring some of these instruments, which I don't have time to get into here, but we could be creative using the resources already in place in the community that you live in. And when this sort of approach is put into practice, it makes it much easier for people to enter into a program in high school. I can envision a spot where a junior who hasn't been in the music program could come in, and because they're not, it's a lot easier for them to come in these types of experiences than it is to join and play in the wind ensemble, for example, right? Okay, so like I said, I asked them to put into place an action plan. And for many of them, this is again back to my research study that just concluded, they valued the experience, they acquired skills, they found it valuable, they all believed that learning by ear was important and a great skill, but they were all reluctant to do it themselves in school still. So that's kind of where the spot I'm focusing now with my work. Finally, okay, one of my students created a class called Small Vocal Ensemble, okay? And you'll see a picture of them singing, but it's a perfect example of where the informal and formal worlds can bridge this gap. He brings the informal pedagogies into his formal world as a music educator, and here's what is some evidence here. He's asking the students to analyze a song that they pick. Here, this girl picked Taylor Swift, Crazier. You can see how she made sense of it, right? If you're familiar with Joan Bruner and his modes of representation, here would be a great springboard of teaching notation, right? Formal symbolic notation. Okay. All right, move real quick here. Okay, and then this is a song that two girls wrote themselves. Okay, they got together and composed their own song, and here's how they wrote it down. They have the harmony. Oh, this is probably in 9th grade. Okay, and here's their notation, and then a teacher helped them out and wrote it into finale, and then the students those two girls taught the song by rote to the rest of the group. And here's a picture of it, and there should be, I hope there's quotes from the students in the classroom about their experience as a member of this group. Okay. So you'll see it looks like a traditional choral concert, right? But this is a song that was written by one of the students.
I'd like for you to just take a minute and jot it down on a piece of scratch paper. Just keep it in your head. Think of what the most powerful, meaningful music-making experience that you have had. Anyone feel comfortable sharing theirs? Go ahead. Thanks, Ben.
So I have 3 children, and they're very young. And they like to sing songs all the time, but sometimes they asked me to play guitar because they had written this song. It was sort of inappropriate in content, but they needed a guitar, and so I played the guitar, and maybe it's just because it was my own children that it was especially meaningful. But watching a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 7-year-old, write a song and actually just wanted to sing it with an instrument and asking me to sort of support their endeavor, I don't know, for me it was
That is very powerful. It's like seeing the process of composition unfold from the earliest stages. Anything else? Jen?
As somebody who grew up as a traditional instrumental student, to be an adult in a music ed workshop and suddenly realize I was able to improvise vocally, huge.
And how did you get that support for being able to improvise vocally, what would you say?
A lot of scaffolding, a lot of safety. Everybody else was singing and doing their own improvisation or chord roots, and so there was plenty of room to play without feeling like the focus of everyone's attention was on me. It was like the earlier one we saw where the kids had the headphones on, were improvising on the keyboards.
Right. So, well, this is good because when I ask this question, I'm always afraid someone's going to say, but that they'll come up with some sort of single musical experience where they were alone. But typically when I ask this, people always say something where they've collaborated with other people. I've never had anybody say, oh, it was when I was woodshedding the D major scale alone in the practice room and finally nailed it. No, people get the most enjoyable and powerful musical experiences from that, almost just that ineffable feeling of making music with other people. So that's why I've decided to focus a lot of my research around collaboration. I'm not going to go through all this research, I've just put this slide up to let you know that there is some, and I did read it. Music research on music student collaboration really finds that students who are able to collaborate together come to better solutions for musical problems, and they inspire creativity in one another. Kind of like Ben's example with his 3 kids. They inspired the creativity in each other and pushed each other to a level they probably wouldn't have gotten before. Jen's experience about improvising in the large group, she was scaffolded up by all the people around her. She obviously could have worked on improvising at home alone, but it was something about the group that brought her into that new level of ability, and that is very normal. Now, I want to also say that there's 2 types of collaboration. There's student-student collaboration, and then there's teacher-student collaboration. So when I talk about collaboration, it does not always mean putting everybody in groups of 4 and having them work on small group projects. You can get the entire class collaborating with you, the teacher, and you can also get them working with one another in larger groups as well. The basic rules of collaboration are that status and action are relatively symmetrical, meaning that everybody is sort of on the equal playing field and that you have the same actions available to you as everybody else in the room. The division of labor shifts rapidly, meaning that in collaboration, you can step back and be the one who just kind of watches, or you can be the one who takes charge. You can be an observer, you can be a great actor and doer, but that will shift back and forth. It's not always 1 leader and 3 followers. And people have the opportunity to move in and out of roles. That's a truly collaborative situation. Now, one of the best ways to think about collaboration is by looking at what it's not. I have a notorious lead foot and a long commute, so this scenario is not unknown to me. When a police officer comes to the door to inform me that I've been speeding and that I'm probably going to be issued a citation, are status and action symmetrical? No. The same range of action is not available to me. I sit in my car, he takes my license, walks back and forth, he is in control. The division of labor does not shift. We each dutifully play our part in the transaction. However, I am cooperating with the police officer. I am not collaborating with him on the issue of getting a citation. So that's what I'm constantly thinking about. Are people just cooperating with me, or are they truly collaborating? And it's a big continuum. You're never going to probably have complete 100% collaboration. You shift back and forth along that depending on what's appropriate in your classroom. But I found it really interesting for my students to even just take a Post-it note, my university students to take a Post-it note and put on their lesson plan with a little question mark, cooperation, question mark, or collaboration, question mark. And see if at any given point you can move people along that line of really working with you. Okay. So I just want to discuss for a second with you, how do you as learners experience collaboration? What do you like and dislike about it? Yes.
Are you talking about just us as teachers, or what do you think our students would like?
You as a person, you, Bradley, you the learner. What do you like about collaborating with other people?
Well, if they can kind of even out our weaknesses, you know, like if we're, like I work with Melissa and she knows I was just leaned over and mentioned this, I'm like terrible if I don't have notation when I'm playing like a percussion line. If I don't have something to look at, I'm like, I have to be absolutely focused on it. I can't, it's just something like blocked for me.
Right.
But on the piano, I'd be fine, but percussion, it's like, and I like, when I'm working with somebody, it's easier if I'm playing with somebody.
Right.
If I'm the sole, you know, shaker player, oh God.
Right, okay. So even out weaknesses and support you. Things, oh yes, go ahead.
I just find the aspect of having other people just give you feedback helps your ideas. Like hearing how they respond to your ideas, even if they're not purposely trying to help, just how they respond can really help you out with your ideas.
Absolutely. So if you think about those two experiences, those are pretty powerful. Bradley said that, you know, the people around him can support his weaknesses and help him do better, and then his strengths at the keyboard support others. And I couldn't see your name. Jamie said that people getting feedback from others is so crucial. And I always think, gosh, how often in classrooms do students have the chance to really identify their strengths and weaknesses, and then identify the people they can support? Do they know their colleagues in the class? Do they know their friends who have strengths and weaknesses? And do they have openings to give that valuable feedback? So, what do you as a teacher find easy or problematic about collaborating in the classroom? Jamie again?
As a middle school teacher, one of my biggest problems is just a social hierarchy in the classroom. You tend to have students at that level who are either very strong leaders, which are few and far between, or who just are not secure in their ability to take a leadership role. So they're just sitting in the passenger seat.
Exactly. So while the same range of actions is available to them, they could be the leader, they're choosing not to. They're on the periphery. And maybe they don't even have the skills to sort of take over from those super strong personal people. People who are super strong personally, I mean.
I'd say for middle school, same thing. Also, just students who they just want you to tell them what the answer is. Then they want to take the test and get an A, and then go home and play on their phones. But I think so. A lot of kids they don't want to create. They don't want to collaborate. They just want to sit there, take their notes, and take the test.
Those are very legitimate, and I think that's definitely true. I mean, they want you to be the policeman. That's the role they're used to. And in fact, you think about how much of their life and their school life, they are just cooperating with people. If suddenly you're coming in and saying, hey guys, we're going to collaborate, you actually get some pushback. It's not like they think this is exciting freedom. They may think this is disturbing weirdness. So, okay. I guess I'd like to know from you guys, what sort of collaboration, when you feel like your students are really collaborating with you or with each other, what's happening, and how would you like to do more? Or areas that you feel like you could amp it up a little bit?
As a middle school teacher too, I don't know, I guess, I feel like I know they're collaborating if I'm having them in small groups in different areas of the room or in another separate area, when I know that I walk in and they don't even notice me.
Great example.
You know, like if I walk in and they're like, Mr. Person, then I know that's either something's gone wrong, somebody's hit each other, you know.
That's a great marker. Yes, go ahead.
Break the door. At our high school, we, my kids have their own sectionals where they meet in sections and they work together. And well, I'm there because I obviously have to legally be there. But I kind of like go in my office and leave my door open, and they completely have self-sustained sectionals where they work together.
Fantastic.
And it is really uncomfortable, especially for new people. But the people who have done it, they just kind of just walk right into it, and they teach the younger kids how to do it and how to work together.
Right. Any areas where you'd like your classroom to be more collaborative? Any areas where you feel like, oh, we're just not, people aren't really working together, they're not giving feedback to each other, I'm running everything, I'm providing all the energy, all the volition.
I guess listening, I want to do listening lessons with my.
And you're telling them what to hear?
It's just, I feel like I'm lecturing,
Yes.
and I definitely have to stop every once in a while. Okay, I'm just shut up.
When you introduce, this in the context of a music class, when you introduce a style of music and the not to sound pedantic, but the mode of production that they're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
That is, if you're going to play a famous pop tune, and you can play it sort of like the record with guitars and amps and a drum kit, as opposed to a piano vocal score, they get much more wrapped up into it. And I can tell that, intra-student collaboration is going on, like this gentleman said, when they don't notice the teacher so much, or especially when the teacher is made to feel unwelcome.
Right.
Like we got this.
They really don't need you, yeah.
Yeah, we've got this, so take a hike. And there's a lot about, especially with middle school kids, there's a lot about I love you, don't go away. I hate you, don't go away.
Yeah.
Kind of a vibe that you get because they don't want you to just vanish. They want to know that somebody is there, kind of, the authoritative fly on the wall. But as soon as you get too close to that nerve, where this is our music, you're the teacher, take a hike.
Right.
Then it gets really intense. And that's juice. That's really exciting.
Right. So that point that he's describing is like, I would call that very far along the collaborative continuum. Like that's really like you can get there, but that takes a lot of building up. The kids who lead their own sectionals, again, that takes a lot of building up, scaffolding of strategies. So I'm going to get to some of those right now. One thing that's been helpful to teachers is to sort of be able to recognize collaboration when they see it. And if you feel like the whole class is working together synchronously on a goal, that's one thing. When the energy in the room, it's hard to describe it, you know it when you feel it. When you have 2 or 3 students working on collaborative projects. When you have opportunities for students to give input and make suggestions. If you think about if you just can stop yourself before telling them the next step, stop and just instead ask a question about what is our next step. One thing I look for a lot in classrooms is what I call multi-directional energy. If I see a lot of eye contact and energy flowing across the classroom, exactly opposite of what's going on right now. Right now, all the energy is going, boom, everyone's eyes are on me. But if there's a lot more zigzagging across than there is just coming bidirectionally, then I'm very pleased. And look at just the little things, like are kids looking at each other across the room for musical reasons? Are they gesturing with one another? Are they swaying together? And just feeling like you can even see some little seeds of people collaborating and knowing that can build on to the future student-led sectionals or student-led groups. But it's okay to not be there exactly, on the first day of school. That's my point. Okay, so now I want to talk about how it is a collaboration. It's a lifestyle change and not a crash diet. So one thing that I want to point out to people is that many times you go to workshops, you get very energized. This happens to me all the time. And I come back, I'm like, all right, we're doing something totally new. Everybody move the desks out of the way. It's folk dancing time, whatever. And the students are very often very threatened and confused by the change. So what I like to get people to think about with collaboration is, again, just the little things and moving yourself along the continuum to more collaborative every chance you get, because it will pay dividends. Now, one of the problems I have with Lucy Green's books, although I do love them, is why people are sometimes a little unsatisfied with workshops like this. Because you go back to your classroom and you think, all right, all those things that she was saying, they're not really working for me. Lucy Green's books, she's very specific. She has a very specific order. She tells you what instruments to have and how to guide the students. But a lot of times you get back to your class, you're like, wait, this is not working at my site, in my context, with my kids. There's a disconnect. I feel like that sometimes when I go to state conferences. I get some great ideas, but maybe they just don't implement well in my own classroom. So, and there periodically comes around on the Facebook feed the 3-day hot dog diet. Now, stick with me here. The hot dog diet, you're supposed to eat a certain array of foods on each day of 3 days, and it makes this magical chemical reaction in your stomach, and then you just magically drop 15 pounds. But the key about the hot dog diet is that there are no substitutions. And this is what I feel like is lacking in some of getting the research about collaboration into the classroom. A lot of things are very prescribed in curricula, and then you take it into your classroom, and you're like, wait, but I don't have that kind of drum. I don't have that kind of room set up. I don't have the ability to get all the kids playing rock bands at once. We only have one electric guitar. Those sorts of problems. It's like the hot dog diet. What if I don't have hot dogs? Can I substitute brats? And wondering about what's okay to change and what's not okay. So I'm really excited to try the hot dog diet. So anyway, getting back to this, if you are able to sort of incorporate some principles of collaboration, and these I think are the 3 big ones. Number 1 is to realize that anytime students are able to work with one another and give one another feedback, they become more creative and have more self-direction. They're able to express what they want to express rather than what you're telling them to express. So anytime that happens is a good thing, even if it's just a little bit. That is what's going to take those middle school kids that don't want to be the drivers and elevate them into feeling like, hey, wait, I actually do have something to say here. The second thing is teachers who are collaborating share goals, and the teacher either allows space for or guides students in creating productive interactions. Now, what I mean by that is that the teacher does not just allow space and go forth and collaborate. Come back to me in 30 minutes with a body percussion rondo or something like that. Students will often go out in the room and be like, I don't know what we're doing, I don't know what we're doing. So many times you need to actually guide them in illustrating what is a productive student-student interaction. Let's come up, let's act it out. Let me give you a written checklist of things that everyone in your group should be doing. So really, collaboration is great, but it's not like something that just automatically happens. And finally, a teacher who is collaborating with her students facilitates their movement toward a shared goal. She provides the necessary background skills and gives it to them and then fades away. So again, I'm not problematizing Lucy Green's material, but I know that she, in her books, which are one of the only pop music pedagogy curricula that I know of, she says, don't show them anything. They could be playing backwards and that's okay. And am I mischaracterizing that?
Not entirely.
Okay. Well, anyway, she really it gives out there a little bit more than I think some teachers are maybe comfortable with, and more than some students would be comfortable with. Ben students don't really want to be figuring it out. They actually need him to show them some chords. And that is okay, because then you can fade away. But you can't just give it all out. I have about 1 minute left. I just want to say for the middle school teachers that group makeup does matter. In my research, it does matter. So you put them in groups and then shift them around a lot. Because we know there are those leaders and there are those followers. And everybody, remember what I said, in a collaborative environment, everybody needs the opportunity to be the leader and the follower at some point. So you can do it randomly the first time and observe what happens and then shift around. The other thing that I think is really funny is that there's going to be a lot of off-task talking. And my student friends say, or my teacher friends say, every time we get in groups, there's so much off-task topic. They just go really off-task and they're not concentrating. And I say, well, if you think they're 100% on task when they're all sitting in chairs looking at you, you are wrong. If I could invent a taskometer where I could see the student's brain going, I'm like 80% with you, 10% with you. Look, just having them look attentive is not a measure of being on task. So actually off-task talking is an important part of forming those collaborative groups. Okay. Oops, sorry. So lifestyle change. These are things that teachers have actually suggested to me, and I'll just show you one slide, and then I'm going to open it up to you guys for a couple of suggestions. One thing that people have suggested is like a sort of very base level of getting students to collaborate is by singing rounds in gradually smaller and smaller groups. And then actually going a step further and talking about what it's like to sing a round, what it's like to hold a part while someone else is singing a different part, or playing rounds together on simple instruments. Seems very basic, but if you think about it, many of us haven't done it since camp. And it was really fun when we did it. So rounds and partner songs, while they seem childish, are sort of an important way to get people used to the idea of like, I'm holding a part and someone else is doing something else. Improvising and elaborating over a known part, improvising over something that's very, very familiar. Playing duets and trios together. Working in small groups on composition. These are all just things that you could do as part of your lifestyle change. It's not your crash diet in collaboration. Anymore, I'm not going to go do the hot dog diet. I should just like eat fewer carbs and more lean meats, gradually for long term instead of trying something new for 3 days that involves a lot of nitrates. Bad idea. Okay, so I'm going to put the lifestyle change part 2 up. These are some more ideas teachers have come up with. And I'm wondering, we're out of time, but I'm wondering if we could hear from maybe 2 or 3 people about some things they have done that seemed like they were pretty collaborative, using my criteria for collaborative interactions, but didn't cause teacher or students to feel like there was no support and no structure.
I have probably one of the younger groups of kids, because I do K2.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. And we've been working on our greeting song, and then we added chord groups to our greeting song. And I started thinking, man, I need to do more group work. I need to do more group work. So after we'd done chord groups and the melody, then I put them into smaller groups, like you had said with the rounds. Only they were groups of 4, and 2 kids had chord groups sitting across from each other, and the other 2 kids in their group sang melody. And the chaos that happened in the room when I had, instead of everybody singing 2 parts simultaneously, everybody singing these same 2 parts, I got really nervous. I don't like to give up control, which is my big thing with collaboration. But, oh my gosh, I had 2nd graders singing with only one other friend independently, because we went through and had each group then do the greeting song. And it was amazing. The kids were supporting each other, and they were developing their collaboration rules on their own. You weren't singing the melody. Hear the melody with me. We have to sing this together.
Right. That's what I actually have that on there. Have students sing to each other face to face and knee to knee.
Yeah.
That's a really effective idea. Any other things that have worked for you? Yes.
I teach an 8th grade guitar class. 8th grade, I had several classes last year. For at the holidays, I had them put on their own holiday concert, and I gave them materials, and then they could get in small groups. I had one kid who actually chose to sing, and these are songs of peace, love, understanding, whatever, for that kind of a thing. And so they chose songs, they chose their own groups, and then I created a class time in which I signed out the stage, and I just invited everybody in the building to come and enjoy.
Right.
And they did get a number of people who came in, and they were very, very pleased with themselves.
Right. So I would say that's like this thing. Discover things like creativity, ensemble, and musical literacy in small groups, because they're very motivated by the fact of coming back together. It's kind of that final step. It's like great to have them go learn songs of peace and love and understanding, but the fact that they're going to have to come back and show people in the class is also a very motivating factor. The last point I'm going to make is just that you can think about the way you ask questions. As a professor, I'm probably pretty bad at this, but really trying to ask students to ask one another questions instead of me coming up with all of them, or ask students to just sort of summarize what they think we've been doing for the last 5 minutes and why. That's very enlightening. So sometimes you can just move your dial a little bit on collaboration just by asking much more open-ended questions. Okay. Questions and input from you guys, for either of us? Yes.
I think the concept of control of the classroom, which is, drummed into every poor teacher from the time they start teacher education to when their principal is, expecting lesson plans and there's all kinds of evaluations and stuff. I think the concept of control needs to be completely reversed to accommodate things like true collaboration. You cannot, you can't expect, if you're going to encourage and facilitate collaboration, you're going to give up some control, and it's going to get messy. And I think people just have to accept that, because if it doesn't get messy, the kids aren't going to feel free. They're going to feel, kind of still like, okay, it's the teacher and it's us. And you want to get, somehow you want to get away from that, that construct.
Right.
And get, so it's the kids. Now, as a music teacher, the last thing I want to do is sit on the sidelines and watch. So I'll pick up a guitar or something so I can participate with the kids, because I just hate watching other people play music and not be involved. But you don't always, not always part of the group to, I mean, if I pick up a guitar, there's going to be kids that are way better guitar players than me, right? So I'm not there to show other people how to play the guitar. I'm just there to participate and lend my energy, But that kind of goes against this deep grain of the teacher has to be, the authoritarian person in the classroom.
Absolutely. And I think I've written about this before, that sometimes asking kids to be extremely quiet and, or some of the things we ask kids to do are really responding to adult needs, not their needs. It's our need, and it's the hallway need, for quiet, everything. So, yeah, but I also want to encourage you is that it's okay to just get a little bit messy. That's what I'm saying. Like, you don't have to do the crash diet. Like, you can do just a little bit. You can get your classroom a little messy and a tiny bit out of control just by asking some crazy questions one day. And just think about a lesson that you're teaching. Like, could I give this a makeover and give a little more, incorporate a little more collaborative techniques within the lesson? And so you don't have to feel like you're losing complete control over everything that you hold dear.
I think it's also wise to educate administrators, maybe other staff who are part of your department, about what to expect if they come and watch your class. That's important too. Yeah.
Matt was saying about the Danielson rubric. I mean, I think our administrators get, at least at our school, get the messy, and they actually like the messy more than
Student-driven work.
Yeah, right.
Student-driven. I mean, in all of the categories, it's all student-driven work to achieve the
Yeah, we
effective.
We should be hands-on to be highly effective.
Highly
They should be running.
Yep.
Right.
It's great stuff to strive for.
Also, messy is completely different for, K to 2 than it is from 3 to 6 than it is.
Oh yeah, K2 can make some big messes.
The last one, Dan, my question is for you. I teach both instrumental music and vocal general. And, in my experience, vocal general, it's very easy to introduce things like collaboration, composition, creativity, and also teaching band that as a college educator, I would imagine that there's a little bit more resistance in that world. Do you see that? And just in my experience so far, I have not really seen a lot developing in the instrumental world, especially the band world.
From the band director,
Like I'm the band director, I stand at the front, everyone is quiet.
Mhm.
You're not my band teacher. What?
Yeah, yeah, and many of my students only know making music through that model and are expected to behave that way when they go back into the schools.
Right.
So yeah, it's not more or less resistance. It's discomfort and nervousness, and more so with the lack of notation because it's such a difficult thing for them to do. But there's ways to break that up. I guess my aunt, if you're going to have that band director schedule, right? Where my day was band, 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 eat, band, 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 do it again, and then that's a great way to begin the change is to have some kind of rotating opportunities in your class where they can break up, and then the notion of resources and how it may work in your school district is another opportunity. But you'd be amazed at how functional it can be having small groups making music in the same room even, and then there's other electronic stuff that can help with that too. But, okay, yeah, one more.
I was just gonna say, I know it's really hard, especially like at the high school, you're trying to set a precedent, like, high school, I'm in charge, this is the way things are gonna be. You have kids from grades 9 through 12, you have the kids, I've been here for 4 years, I'm new. So you like wanna set that precedent, but it is worth it, like she was saying, the small, like little teeny things every day, so that like for me, I know when I have a substitute and I'm out, I know my class is gonna run like normal because the kids are used to it, because they do it every day. And it makes you feel more comfortable. In the end, like those little bits of that collaboration, and then when you're not there and you don't have a music sub that can do anything except read a magazine, your kids will want to make music that day you're not there, and they'll collaborate without you. So I think it's worth it.
Thank you. Good deal.
That's right. Well, there's several of them actually.
Yeah, we're many, yeah. So,
Okay, we're out of time.
Thank
you
you.
very much.